biggest franchise... What?
Thought you were ready.
I was ready to go, Vince. What happened?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
I was ready. I was ready to go. I was going.
Well, it says on the back of this, turtles are ready for action. COWABUNGA.
Oh, I'm ready. I am ready for the action. And it's Franchise Friday. It has returned finally. And this is a franchise I've been wanting to do for a really long time. And it is going to be the TMNT Turtles.
No, Dave. No.
That's the TMPT Turtles.
No, Dave. No. It is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Turtle power. Turtle power.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the beginning of the Turtles, Vince. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, like back before time started, before the Turtles were the Turtles. I remember the first person, and this is gonna blow your mind a little bit, and the first person who's ever said anything to me about the Turtles, and I think you probably remember him, I think you knew him, was Carl Cords. Remember Carl Cords?
Yeah. Barely, but yeah.
Yeah, he said something to me about, well, there's this really cool comic out about these turtles and they're ninjas and they fight and they're killing people and it's really great. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then about a week or two later, my friend Tim, we were on a school bus and he said something to me about the Turtles again. And he's like, oh yeah, there's this really great comic called The Turtles or something, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you got to really check it out. And so at that point in my life, I was big into comics. I mean, I would go out and buy 10, 15 comics, a month or a week, and I was just comic fanatic back then.
I remember you had subscriptions to comics. You always go to your comic book store and get the subscriptions all the time.
Oh, yeah. And I remember going in the comic book shop, and I'm saying, what is this thing about this turtle thing? You got a turtle comic? And at that point, it had already been out for a while, but it hadn't really caught on until probably like the third or fourth issue. Because when Eastman and Laird came out with them originally, they published one comic like a year, because that's all they could afford. So it was like 2 years before like the third or fourth issue came out. And that's where I still have it. I still got all the original Turtle comics I own. And I don't have the first issue, unfortunately, because it was already out and I was gone before I could get it. But I do have this. This is the original comic. This is obviously a reprint. And you see how old this thing is. It's like waterlogged. Pages are falling out of this thing. But this is the original artwork for the Turtles. And it's phenomenal. And it's raw. You can see the pencil lines still in the stuff. And that's why I love it. When they were like drawing the words out, they had underline the words. There's still pencil lines there, and they didn't erase them. And it's just great stuff. It's fantastic work.
I never heard about the Ninja Turtles until pretty much when the cartoon came out. I had heard about it from David. I remember David mentioning them. It's like, have you ever heard? I remember him saying to me, "Did you ever hear about the Ninja Turtles?" But I think by that point, the cartoon was coming out, if I remember right. So, and I remember watching a few episodes of the cartoon, but for some reason, I don't know, at first I just didn't get into it. It was like, okay, it was like watching the Transformers or GoBots or something. I just was kind of like, what is this? This must be more for kids or something. And that's what I kept thinking about it. But then later on, as it got a little more popular, I started to watch the shows more and watch the cartoon more, and I was like, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And I actually watched the cartoons, and I never really read any of the comics, because I never really saw any of the comics, even though I was into comics. But I always heard, the comics were much better than the cartoon, and that the cartoon was more for kids than the comic was.
Yeah, the original comic, I'm looking through it right now, is violent. It was written for adults, and I don't want to get into the whole origin of the Turtles, even though it's fascinating. they wrote it as a joke because they were fans of Daredevil. And if you read the comic, there's so many references to Daredevil, like the character Stick. That's Splinter, basically, and the Turtles. And when the Daredevil, when he was a kid, this chemical comes out of a truck and hits him in the face and makes him blind, but it heightens all his senses. In the Turtles comic, it comes out of the truck, hits him in the head, and falls down the sewer and turns the Turtles into the mutants. So they were massive Jack Kirby fans and huge Daredevil fans, and wrote this as a sort of a tribute in a joking manner to Daredevil, and that's where they came. I mean, literally, that's the origin. That's where they came from. And they were only going to draw this. This was like one shot. This is the whole first comic, and that was it. They were going to draw this, and they were done. But they found out, oh wow, this is really popular, and now, of course, they're billionaires from doing that. But the original comic it's really dark. It's so well written. They actually use their weapons. They cut people in pieces. There's blood, and I mean, there's cussing in it, and it's fantastic. If you ever got the opportunity to read the original, pick it up. You'll love it. It's fantastic.
So then they announced that they were going to make this movie of the Ninja Turtles,
But hang on, I want to say before the movie. This is something I will never, ever, ever forget, Vince. Because when I was reading the comics, this is way before the movie, and before the cartoon even came on, they announced the original Turtle action figures.
Oh, yeah.
It was on the back of one of the Turtle comics. And I turned to the back of the Turtle comics, like, oh my god, they're making action figures, I have to have them. And then when I looked at the figures, I was like, why is there all their bandanas different colors? Because the original Turtles all had red bandanas, and the only way to identify them was their weapons. So if Leonardo had his swords, you can see, oh, well, that's Leonardo. And if like Donatello had a stick, that's the only way to identify them. And I always thought that was so cool. But then they had to change it up for the cartoon so the kids wouldn't be confused to who was who, but whatever. Anyway, they had these pictures of the action figures on the back of the comic. And I went to South County, and I went to the K&B toy store when it was still open, walked in there, and I was like, do you have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures? And the woman looks at me like I just walked off a spaceship. She's like, huh? I said, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures, do you have those? She's like, what is that? I'll never forget that. And I said, you never heard of them? And she's like, no. I was like, oh, well, you will. And I walked out of the place.
Oh, well, you will.
I said, oh, well, you will. And I walked out. And I'll never forget that. And it's like, then they blew up a couple months later when the cartoon came on. So, when did the movie come out? I guess in the 80s?
The 90s.
Oh, well, we need our way, way back clock. It'll tell us. And I think at the point where it came out, the Turtles, it's like every movie. It's like every freaking movie that comes out, they wait so long until after the franchise is over with and people are tired of it and they're sick of it. Let's make a movie, And it's like, that's pretty much what they did. And I was still a fan of the Turtles. I wasn't like super fan or anything anymore. So I went to go see this film, no idea what to expect from the thing. And the first movie really just blew me away. I was like, wow, they followed the comic. Holy cow, I can't believe they actually followed some of the stuff right out of the original comic is in this movie. And it just, it floored me. I was like, wow, I can't believe they did that.
Yeah, and I remember when this movie was coming out, or when they announced that they were going to make Ninja Turtles, I remember talking to my friend Robin about it, and I'm like, yeah, they're making a movie of the Ninja Turtles, and he's like, yeah. Like, he wasn't really impressed by it. He was never, he wasn't really into the cartoon or into any of the action figures or anything, so he wasn't all impressed by it. But I was like, I don't know, I kind of want to see it because I think it's going to be more like the comic. He was like, oh, whatever. So then when I did go and see the movie and I sat down and watched it, and it was like, wow, this is really good. And like I said, I had never seen an actual Ninja Turtles comic. But I could tell from watching the film, it was more like the comic than it was the cartoon. And I loved that. I loved it. And I came out of the movie going, man, that was really good. I was really impressed by it. And I loved everything that they did with the turtles and the even though they're obviously in costumes and stuff, it didn't look that way. It looked, for the most part, it looked real. It looked like that they were the actual characters. They were the actual Ninja Turtles. And I mean, I look at it now and I can tell, but at that time, it wasn't, it was like, these are the real turtles.
And of course, the amazing Jim Henson Group is one who did the costumes. And, when I was watching it just recently again, I was like, when I saw them for the first time, I'm like, oh, okay, this is the Turtles. I totally accept it. I mean, even though they're big foam outfits, you're like, yep, it's the Turtles. I didn't even think twice about it. It's like, all right, yeah. I mean, they look great. I mean, how else would they do it? I mean, back then, there would be no way to really do it except for costumes like that. And Jim Henson just blew it away. And I loved they had scars and textures, and just the outfits were so well done.
And that's what I mean. I mean, they were so lifelike that way because they did have texture. They did have the scars. They did have cuts and stuff in their shells, and they're just the look of them. They had like little spots and stuff all over their faces, and they looked like the Ninja Turtles straight out of the comics, and I was impressed with it. They didn't look like Muppets, is what I'm saying too. Because if you immediately, if you think Jim Henson, of course you go to the Muppets, and they didn't look like that at all. They looked like what the Ninja Turtles should have looked like.
And then the smart thing too is they put Casey Jones in this movie.
Yeah, and I loved his character in here. The guy that plays this part, I thought was fantastic.
And the way he met Raphael is right out of the comics. Raphael was dressed up in his outfit. He walked out there to the park, and he met Casey Jones beating up the criminals. All that is out from the original comic. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like, wow, that's great. That's so cool that they did that. And I like Shredder in the movie too. Shredder was pretty intimidating, and he kind of looked like he did in the original comic, except he had like the grills, but I figured if he didn't have that, you couldn't understand what he was talking. He'd be like, he had to have like holes.
Yeah, if he had that like that what was it, like a cloth mask or something, like just to cover his nose and everything, all you saw was his eyes and stuff like that. Yeah, you wouldn't understand him.
And I love the fact that he was recruiting all the kids in the city to become like the Foot. And the Foot looked great in the movie too. They looked just like the comics, like the cartoon. They did a really good job with the Foot. Everything in here literally looked like they just pulled it right out of the comics and put it into the movie. And you, at that point in the 90s, you didn't see that kind of stuff. And it was really impressive.
Yeah, and how right now with all these superhero films that they're doing, they keep trying to get more like realism, to make things that are even supernatural or things that are way out there technical, like Iron Man and all that. They keep trying to make things look as if this would actually happen, this would actually be a real world thing. Back then, they weren't really trying for that, but it actually kind of ends up that way. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here that, okay, yeah, you have the Ninja Turtles themselves, they're mutants, and that's kind of far-fetched, but it actually fits right into the world. I mean, they're in New York, they're in the sewers, they're in the... It all kind of fits there, and you're like... that's probably why you kind of accept it, even if they're in foam outfits, you just kind of accept that these are the Turtles.
And the thing they did great in the movie, too, is they gave the Turtles heart. There was a lot of heart in this movie. Again, one of my all-time favorite comics of the Turtles was in this film. And I haven't read it, and oh my god, I couldn't even tell you how long. But I can't remember. I think the main character was, in the movie, I think it was Leonardo that got hurt, wasn't it?
No, it was Raphael.
The comic took place in a wintertime, and they went to the farm just like they did, and Raphael got hurt, and Leonardo, he was the one who was writing the diary. It wasn't April like it was in the movie. In the comic, it was Leonardo, and he was sitting there writing a diary about what happened, and they lived on this farm trying to get him to heal, and it was just one of the most powerful, amazing, well-written comics to this date that I've ever read. And they put that in the movie. And if that whole part wasn't in the movie, this wouldn't have been as a good a film. That whole sequence, that's what made this movie, I think.
And one thing I totally agree with you is about how much heart that this film had. And because of that, it also has a lot to do with like family and families being together, and fathers and sons and mothers and daughters and things like that, and just family. And it is actually family entertainment. It's family fun. And they get dark with this movie, but at the same time, it's not so dark that, you know, little kids can't watch it. You know what I'm saying? So little kids can watch it, big kids can watch it. It's family entertainment.
And the whole pizza thing came from the cartoon. There was no pizza anything in any of the comics. All of that was from the cartoon. And what they did with the movie, the first one, is they did a great job mixing the original comic in with the cartoon. So you had the darkness of the original comic and the goofiness and the fun of the cartoon, and it was just mixed perfectly. And this is still holds up as one of the best superhero movies out there. I just loved rewatching this. I had so much fun rewatching this movie.
Yep, I totally agree. I mean, yeah.
So what are you going to give this movie, Vince?
So actually, I really enjoyed this film. I enjoyed it when I first saw it. I enjoyed it watching it again here on the Blu-ray set that we have, which is the 4 discs or 4 Blu-ray movies all together. And I enjoyed it. I don't think the Blu-ray itself was that great of a Blu-ray. It doesn't have any real extras on it, and as far as the transfer goes, it was pretty much plain. It's not that it's bad, it's just kind of just blah. Okay, so I loved the movie, and it was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun watching it, and I actually think this is one of the best Ninja Turtle films of all the Ninja Turtle films. So I would definitely give this movie the bomb!
I think I spent like $14 on Amazon, so it's not really that expensive. Transfer wise, it's really grainy. It's not crystal clear. I mean, they could have done a lot better job, and maybe they will. Maybe they'll re-release an anniversary edition or something. But for the film, this is still one of my favorites, and I'm giving it the bomb.
Turtle power! Power!
I'm still sick. I've been sick for 3 weeks. I'll be alright.
Turtle power!
And we will be back next Friday for another Franchise Friday when we review The Secret of the Ooze.
The Secret of the Ooze?
Ooze.
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 So join us then, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can come back and join us. And we'll be back on Box Office Maniacs.